So go ahead and take both knees, both go to the left. So this is the same. So now if you think about when you start the movement, come back to the middle, something has to initiate the movement. So you have to weight shift, and that could probably happen in the hip joint. Can anyone feel where that movement happens? Either of you two, where do you initiate? Yeah, in the hip joint? Yeah, usually. So, and then gravity wants to pull the knees. As soon as you take them off balance, gravity wants to take them. So you immediately go into eccentric on this side of this hip and eccentric on the inside of that hip. So you're looking at the outside of that hip and the inside of this hip. And then, of course, because it gets more and more, now if she stayed just with the hip joints moving, it would look like this. The pelvis wouldn't move. But because she's a skeleton, then there's a sequence, trajectory. She gets there, and it picks up the next chain, which is the pelvis, which means that this side has to lengthen here and all the way up to her shoulder, right? Same here. See that? So good question. So let's come back and see what change has it made. So now if she crosses her right leg, she's going to go to the right. So cross your left leg, keep going to the left. Cross your left leg over the right and go to the left. So what's the change? What's the qualitative change? Then there's a quantitative change as they go down. Can you feel it? The weight of it? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Because she can't do as much in her hip joints. Because the hip joints are now locked in together, it shunts the movement up into her spine much faster. Right? So you need much less turn before you start seeing it traveling further and further up the spine. And therefore, you very quickly cannot use the hip muscles, the muscles connecting the pelvis to the femur, so I'm calling the hip muscles. You immediately start having to use the trunk more. So you've got the two things, the added weight of the leg, taking it over, which accentuates the work of the slow lowering, the eccentric work, and it shunts the movement higher up. So they're both good for the things. Now this is again, this is my fine mechanical opinion. Okay, so over they go again. And of course, it doesn't matter how far you go in a way, because you can see the ghost of the movement going up in this way, right? You can see what's happening in the foot. So there is also activity in the ankle to stop the knee sucking. Now, if it was a fast movement, so just drop your knee, and there's not that eccentric lowering. So here's what is the truly beautiful thing about this movement. As they go to the left, both go to the left. So here's the lowering, lengthening, all up the right side, up the back side. And now the reversibility comes back. And those same muscles have to switch. And when you feel that beautiful moment, I think it's a delicious moment of slowly lengthening and working. And then the change of direction, the same muscles work and pull you back. My people on the floor, can you feel that? Feel that change? But you can't feel the deliciousness. If you go too far, it's not delicious. And there's something about finding the deeper proximal muscles that makes it delicious. You don't go too far. Sometimes you have to go far enough, though. You have to have enough weight pulling you down. Feel that engage. So you all want to try this on your back. You know the point, or do you know the point down? And it just feels quietly powerful because it's not effortful. And this is a unique experience. To feel powerful without effort is really fun. You know, that's the sweet spot. Again, I'm not sorted. I've had enough tennis. Every now and again, you just do that flute shot just to kill it, and you've got no idea how you do that. It feels awesome, and it's so powerful, but it's effortless, right? That's organisation. And what we're doing here is operationalising it, so it's not a fluke. And that's why you keep doing that and finding that point that's more and more reversible. Okay, so here's that beautiful thing. Now what we're doing in the lesson, we're doing it relentlessly, going to the left, so the weight of this leg is pulling you down to the left. That's why it's always that direction, so it's this direction. And the lengthening is through there, so the muscles are paying out rather, like this, and then they're pulling in, pulling back in, pulling the knees back up. Right? Yeah, that's the flexion, and then that's coming back up. The flexors are still working. Right? But remember from yesterday, if you were working the flexors, the extensors will be deactivated and then reactivated. Yeah. That's the coordination between the two. Now, what I tell my clients is this is the best workout for your, for your whole pelvic girdle. Because actually, if you go over a long way, some of the extensors in the back, like you don't need to know that quickly, but they start working because they're going to pull you back as well. So you start using, she's going into extension. Now she's doing the back. You can feel for yourself how that plays out. Okay, so that's one thing to think about. Now, of course, then we do it the other side and it works, the whole trunk, the other diagonal. Now let's just take these legs down. Anything you two want to comment on that you're feeling? And that's that lengthening idea, because you are slowly lowering into a longer position and then feeling back in. And that's what we talked about yesterday, this idea of if you can lengthen as you're working, that's sort of compressing. This is why powerful doesn't feel easy, because it's stuck. Whereas if I'm powerful and I'm maintaining my length, that's when I get that powerful shot, because I'm still long. Yeah. So do the palm. You can go to the right. Now this is where you guys were all sensationally good. The general public won't do what you two just did spontaneously. Like I said in the lesson, they don't know that they've got a shoulder girdle that can slide forward on the step like that. Practitioners are not in no one. We take that knowing for granted. You think that's basic, not basic for the general public. I can't do it. Can't do it. Like, I've got to bend my elbow. I've got to bend my elbow. Oh, you want me to take my hands? I can't do it because I'll do this. They've got no idea of that. Right? So their shoulder blades are stuck on their chest. Not everybody, but a lot of people. Does anyone remember being like that, doing that movement the first time and going, don't be stupid, you can't do that? Yeah. And thinking the teacher's a moron. Yeah. Like you asking the impossible, because it's not in your self-image that your shoulder blade can slide like that. Yeah, they might have done that to give you the idea. There is a slide, because that's breaking that complex task into something smaller first, to show people one of the components that you need to do the whole movement. Yep. Yeah. You could do that. You could slide, or you could do one of these movements where you just have the arm up there and take your fingers closer to the ceiling, and then feel the shoulder blade come back onto the. You do that bouncing stuff. We do that. You could do that to show them that you can not only, because it's not just the shoulder blade sliding forward. Her sternum's going that way and her ribs are folding. There. And the people's ribs don't move like this in the time. It's got a rib basket. It's a fixed basket. You're getting this rib, we're getting this nice soft thing. The ribs can do all this. Go blow. These ribs are faked. Yep. Okay, so go back to watch them go to the right. Watch that shoulder girdle, and then it picks up the ribs, and then they roll. And where are they? So again, what initiates the movement? Come back to the middle. And what do you use to initiate the movement? In the shoulder joint, and the tiny thing, you keep the movement tiny still. There, they're kind of weighed up in gravity. They take themselves just off balance, and then the muscles in the back of their shoulder, on the back of their chest, stop them falling. It's that lengthening along the back of them. They might use their flexors to pull themselves over. When you get to a certain point, it's your extensors that can stop you falling over. There's a certain point where your flexors are taking you over to a point, and then your extensors are coming eccentrically to stop you actually falling. Seems bizarre, but that's how it is. Sorry? Not moving or moving? Oh, you could feel it, yeah. Oh, coming, bringing you back. Which is the extensors bringing you back. The extensors bringing you back. You know, particularly in the shoulder and down the back of there. You can feel that for yourself, but it's a combination thing. It's not as simple as just the flexors and extensors. Because actually what's happening, if you think about it as a rotatory movement, the muscles around that chain, that girdle, they have to pull a little bit here, then when you get to here, these ones pull and these ones pull and these ones pull and these ones pull. So it's actually handing on the baton of responsibility of pulling it back, the whole girdle, around the chest and around the pelvis. That's why it's an ingenious movement, done slowly. Okay. They can work. They're probably stabilizing you there. Yeah. Yeah. And they want to go with you. Now, if you bent your knees up, so people said to do this with your knees bent or not. So watch what happens when you, I think we did it with your knees bent, I can't remember. And at first, so see, the legs are moving as a result of the shoulder, but what some people were doing at first was, because this was more in your mind, actually the initiation was more here, and then see, that's an undifferentiated movement. It didn't look like right. So well, not mean. You can see why I would have. Yeah, it's much easier. Yeah.
Back gradation, I suppose, is going through the chain of muscles. Is that also why you don't get the that thing went from slow to should go down? So
yeah. 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 Sequential, graded, coordinated. Yeah. Yeah. So they all get to do a little bit. So in my head, I get this lovely image of the tonus being spread out around the whole circle of the girdle. And the pelvis, the pelvic girdle, so I think about, they've got these chains of muscles around here, and then you've got, pecs here and the muscles at the back and the muscles between the shoulder blade. So they kind of create, yeah. And they take it in these movements, they have to take it in turn to work. And one has to hand over the responsibility to the other, and then to the other, and then to the other. So when you're here, for example, so then what pulls her back is that if her shoulder girdle is coming back, she may pull back a little bit, but the muscles right deep close to the spine will come back. And then these muscles here in the shoulder, and then so forth, and that pulls her back. And then the ones in the front have to come in, slowly lower her, so she passes over the back and the responsibility to the front, for example. So that's why it's coordinating the flexors and extensors, because you're going seamlessly from the back muscles pulling you to the front muscles lowering you, and so forth. It's complicated, and you know what? It does not matter that you don't really understand that, because you'll feel it. You can't. Girdle. Yeah, and I like the word the girdle of muscles around the pelvis. I find much more useful than this idea of having a core where the pips are, because the core, whatever. You want the core makes it sound like it's something static. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And it's got little bits, you know, there's muscles that go this way, there's muscles that go this way, there's the ones here, there's the ones here, and they all have to kind of coordinate together in this beautiful mashup, don't they? It's lovely. And you get up and you feel quite contained and nice. Okay, so what else about the lesson? Why did he do what? Why do you think the hugging? So what did you feel after the hugging and the rocking? Yeah, it does. It's different. It is differentiating, and the fact that you go fast is really interesting thing. You don't do it first, but if you think about it, you're lengthening the girdle in this because you're keeping the pelvis relatively still, and you're taking this away. So the fibers, let's say there's fibers that join the bottom of the ribs to the pelvis. That's part of this girdle, and they're going long, and they're pulling back, and then they're going short and long and short. There's ones that go this way and ones that go this way. So they're kind of opening and closing. They're going so fast. So that's happening between the thoracic girdle and the pelvic girdle. But it's also happening, you know, between each the rib has muscles that go this way and this way, and they're being lengthened and shortened. You're getting this opening, closing all the time. And because it's a bit fun, and it changes the pace, and then you do the head goes with, the head stays still, that's a differentiating thing, and then the head goes opposite, which is the ultimate differentiating. And as a tactic, differentiation is so useful because it shows, in my mind at least, and you know, Zara and Luce and Jenny can say what they think differentiating is. I feel like it's the brain realising, oh shit, they're separate, oh damn, so are me. Because the brain will kind of model the movement as if the whole spine is the same thing. When you differentiate, the brain's going, you're kind of whacking the brain on the head, literally going, brain, the cervical spine can do something different to the rest of the spine. They don't have to always go out together. Yeah. And for ease, it's clumped those two things together. And it's a bit like when you're driving, you know, when you're first driving and you have to steer and you have to accelerate and you have to brake, and they're all separate things. And what we do to learn is we associate them and clump them together, so it's one thing called driving. And that's a great thing. It makes it really efficient, but it's very unaware. You know, so you get into a different car with different pedals and you're like, I don't know what to do. And then you do something. So this clumping together of stuff is a great thing, but we want to pull it apart because it's not always a great thing. You don't to rotate your shoulders. Most of the time it's good for your head to go with it, but sometimes you don't want it to. Driving, you don't necessarily want to. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You want to keep your eye on the ball and the rest of you go. So you want the brain to be able to put them together when it's useful, take them apart. So in these differentiating movements, that's what we're doing neurologically. Saying to the brain, sure, go together, that's fine. Now, but hey, the head and the chest, look, they like going out, but they don't always have to go out together. Sometimes they can go out on their own. Sometimes they can come back on their own. Sometimes one can go to the footy and the other one can go to the tennis, and then they come back home. The other one can go to the footy and can go to the tennis and come back home. Sometimes they can both go to the tennis and come back. And that's very useful, right? Because then we've got a lot more options instead of the one option, which is the head and the chest are the same thing. And then, of course, all of it is about showing that the chest and the pelvis can be the same thing or not. So why do you think that is? So, ladies, cross legs, drop to whichever leg is crossed and stay there where it's comfortable. And slowly lift your head. This is ingenious because it's tidying up. For people who are still insisting on having short abdominals, this is, yeah. So it's going, okay, look, for those of you who are still gripping with your gut, which most of us, is one of the most common things, is sort of hang on here, it's going, okay, fine, shorten your flexors. particularly your belly wall, but shorten all the little flexors, all the little muscles in between each rib. Yeah, sure, shorten, shorten, shorten. Yeah, sure. Flexors in the neck, shorten. Go ahead, knock yourself out. And then let go. So the lengthening coming back. Now, because it's in a twist, it's really targeting some of the, in my mind, it's targeting some more the diagonals in the belly wall, and the, the diagonals. And then, of course, you do it the other way, and then you do it with your legs in the middle. I kind of do that, so you get the vertically oriented fibers as well. So it's extraordinarily cunning. It's going, sure, if you want to hang on with those muscles, go ahead, shorten again. You don't have to work hard because it's against gravity. And then, however, coming back, you do have to lengthen. And therefore, you get all of this space opened up in the front of you. And then when you go to twist again, you've got so much more length. So for most people, they can twist even further because they've got the length. Now, the cunning thing, of course, is by shortening the flexors, you're lengthening the extensors. So if you've got someone like me he's got more light, I mean, I'm short in my upper abdominals and short in my lower extensors, so I'm fabulous. So for me, this works great because I get to shorten and lengthen everywhere that I need to shorten and lengthen.
Not the movement in itself that we're on about, it's your awareness of what's going on and then maybe adapt, utilising that information for another when you're actually moving around. So how does that work? Because it sounds more like this is a great movement in order to get this to let go and this to... Yeah, and then this when they feel tight, but that's not the purpose, is it? It's to somehow be able to choose to do that in everyday movement.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about it is that this lesson worked pretty much all of you many, many times without me explaining to you that this is what was happening. You don't need to understand any of this cognitively. Your brain understands it somatically, and that's the important thing. Your brain then understands about, because you paid attention to the sensation of opening. So at that really somatic level, where you're generating your body image, you put that data into that system right where it needs to go. Now, we're bubbling it up into language because you're in a training program. There is no need to bubble up this explanation into the public. In fact, I wouldn't do it if I were you. Don't do it. It just confuses people. It's unnecessary. And some of you are sitting there going, so unnecessary. I don't want to do it either. You don't need to understand this. I understand it because it's where my interests lie. But other practitioners know, and they don't need to, and they're better practitioners than I am, right? So this is just another way of articulating it that is not especially necessary. And you might not believe me, but it's true. Isn't it, Ruth? Isn't it, Zoe? Isn't it, Jenny? Isn't it, Nancy? Isn't it other practitioners in the room? Right? You don't need to think of this lesson like I do for it to work. And for it to keep working. Because your system understands it.
But it would be important to remember that for letting go part really, really important. Just to do it, you kind of like provoke them going into their habit.
Yeah.
Just comes through.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, you're right. That is an important thing because again, what was offending me so much about this function with this poor kid with CP and this dude holding his knees and the kid going, he was never letting go, ever, just in this, and this, and this, and this. And then all these dickheads are writing and saying, oh, that's so inspiring. And this guy, I've got clients who, they live in wheelchairs and they cannot switch their gut off. They cannot switch these muscles off, so they can't lie flat in bed anymore. And there's this dickhead making it worse. It's just, I was almost in tears this morning when I saw this. And I've got, because I'm literally sitting above that email is a young man he's in his early 30s, again with CP, saying, I haven't seen you for a couple of years, I need to come back in. Because with him, it was exactly, I had to ring his gym instructor and say, please stop doing stomach crunches. Because this guy is so kyphotic in his spine and he's so tight, he can't use his diaphragm anymore. He can't lie flat on his back in a normal bed anymore. Because he's in a wheelchair and gravity pulled him over, he's short and contracted. so much. And then these dicks think they're being smart, teaching him to get his core working through stomach punches. That's what the thing says. Look how great this is. And everyone's like, oh, it's so inspiring to see this young man activating his core. And I want to kill them. I do. I actually feel violent about it. Because I know what's going to happen to that poor young man. Because I've got another young man in his 30s who, I tell you, I kid you not, this is going to kill him. Because when you cannot breathe and you are so contracted here and you cannot go any straighter than this, I can't even flex as much as he is. I can't breathe here. He's going to get pneumonia sometime and he won't be able to clear his lungs and everything. But, you know, this, I'm so on my soapbox today. No. No. I'm very
core is just good.
Yeah, the core is good. And you said to them, what's your core? And they couldn't, I'm sure I'm being very nice and very arrogant. But what functional benefit is this? I cannot think of one. I mean, good gym people don't do this stuff anymore. Anyway. And this guy, his head was so flexed forward. He was working his neck muscles so hard. His chin was nearly on his chest. But it wasn't. And because he had his legs fixed. It was so wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
How would you, like an exercise setting, how would you actually work the core, well?
This.
This?
Not just this, but any of these sorts of things activating the flexors and in ways that are functional and dynamic. Because this is where people think the core is something that stays still. Like I've got to have a strong, solid core, like in the apple, that doesn't move. And it should move.
So
Dynamic.
What about something like, because people have always been pretty big on like plank and stuff like that, and there's static movements because kind of like essentially I interpret it tells you to kind of wake your muscles up, even though they're just holding. And I totally get you. And, experientially too, that you can just tighten and hold up.
Yeah, I don't understand the plank. I don't understand why people want to do it. I do not understand what the function is. Because I tell you what, the women's health videos making a shitload of money out of people doing too much.
Yeah.
Because the pressure it's putting on your pelvic floor is unreal.
So more dynamic and
Through movement.
And the rest part's really important between, like, even just between one repetition. Is that essential, or is it because when you're building muscle, it's different?
Yes and no. You don't always have to rest. But what the women's health physios are telling me, what they're seeing is with all this planking business, is that people are learning to switch the muscles on, and they forget how to switch them off. And because it's sort of overflow, they're switching all the gut muscles on the pelvic girdle. Pelvic floor is part of that switches on, and these women can't let their pelvic floors go. So then they have all sorts of trouble because those muscles get very short and very tight and actually very weak. And then they get incontinent in their 20s. And so the physios are having to teach them how to let go. So they're kind of being forced to learn what we know, which is important. It's really great to switch muscles on, and it's even greater to switch them off. You know, it's like lights. You want to learn how to switch off a light, otherwise, Yeah. Oh, these women rip themselves to shreds. They're having, And so, some, I know a couple of women who were athletes who, were for their athletic ability extremely toned in their pelvic girdle, and they fall like buggery in childbirth. And they split. I mean, I can't say anything else. Separated a lot, but and they don't let, and it's uncomfortable. Their pregnancies are quite uncomfortable. I remember when I was pregnant, and Arlene gave me an FI at about 5 months, and I'd been holding my tummy in without realising it, and she gave me an FI, and my abdominals let go, and all of a sudden, good old Eddie, I didn't know he was good old Eddie then, but, had room for me. And all of a sudden he was like swimming and happy and backstroke and it was lovely and front stroke. Because I didn't even know I was holding my belly in. And I tell you, it was so much easier because then I could breathe more. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to get political here, are we? No. No, just joking.
Yeah, that doesn't allow that.
Yeah.
When they get a soft go into labour, they
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
don't move.
Yeah.
And with the
Yeah.
whole little foot that's down
Yeah.
like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Not knowing how to let go because, as my friend says, you have to let go and you have to sit a vacuum cleaner. I thought that might stop the conversation. My friend might said, "No," they said, "Is it really like?" Yeah. Oh, you did it four times, Jenny. Twice, one after, and one and 2 times in a couple of hours. Crazy lady. Okay, so I've been on my soapbox. Sorry about that. Am I sorry? A little bit. Not really. So that's that lesson. Now, the order makes. He's kind of mashed those sort of things in together, the arms and the legs and the flexing thing. So you can see actually those moves appear in other lessons. So it's a bit of Lego in that sense, that you can take some of those bits and build a different functionality because there's something really universally beautiful about those. And there's elements of that kind of thing. But this idea of passing the baton on from muscles around in a chain around our girdle is that's why we do so many rotary movements, why we do so many spiral and twisting movements, because we're requiring that kind of sequencing of activation. And it's ingenious and it's marvelous because you think about a lot of other exercises where the exercise is always in this plane, and it's always this and it's always this. And my colleagues at home, they often write, Susan's off spiraling, and they put her off spiraling. That's why we use spirals and twists so much, because it puts it more functional, and it requires that coordination where we're not just flexing, extending, which we do in the first 10 minutes. But the truly beautiful organisation happens with spirals. Or the clutches, how do you call it? Sorry, there's a voice in the room. All right, that's enough. Bye. See you tomorrow. No worries.